Right, now we're going to look very briefly at how we could write an example question. So here is an example question from a few years ago. They ask you to compare the way poets present ideas about power in Ozymandias and one other poem of your choice from Conflict Poetry. So power, thoughts about power. You can pick any poem and you can weave it in any way you like. What you want to focus on is very much how power is not just physical, but it's also mental and emotional. Alright, so if we pop across here, I'm going to do just a piece of this because I want to show you the difference between the lengths. So for this piece of writing, I decided to feel very confident, so I wrote a really long paragraph before. But let's say that just for today, we're going to go from here. Now this one is about language, and this paragraph is about structure, and then you've got a conclusion. So we're just going to listen to how these sound. How I'm doing well is by all of the green words. Do you see here? Decay, shattered, boundless, lone, no trees, sunk. Okay? The green are the verbs, not the verbs, the quotes. I can pick any quote I like, but you see how small they are? And I'm embedding them into the sentence that I'm already saying. I'm absolutely comparing because I start off by saying in both poems something happens, and then I say similarly in this poem happens, whereas, and something else. So I very much am comparing. The purple here is when I'm using my own metaphor. And then, of course, the bold is my method. How many methods do I need? Oh, I don't need that many. Maybe 3, maybe 2. Don't focus on them. Have at least one, but focus on the inference rather. So I'm just going to read these through so you can hear how they sound. Now, if you're a person who doesn't like poetry, this quality here is pass-worthy, right? So you can rest assured that this is about 2 sides, because obviously the font here is quite a small one. It's quite a narrow font. So I've said here, in both poems, nature is presented as violent and merciless force. In Ozymandias, Shelley describes the statue as shattered, with clear, blunt evidence of decay. These adjectives show how nature has literally obliterated everything this once mighty ruler ever created. The fact that this lone statue is slowly sinking into a boundless desert underscores the notion that nature is swallowing Ozymandias whole. His power was simply a fickle and fleeting illusion. Similarly, in Storm on the Island, Heaney describes how life has been stripped off the island by the merciless and relentless weather. There are no trees, and their houses are sunk into the rock. Both these descriptions imply how the only way to survive is to hide and pray, which are normally actions of a weak and desperate child. Like the inhabitants of Ozymandias' world, the islanders on this island do not run away either, because there is nowhere to go. Both poets clearly portray their victims' existence as desperate, where survival is based on luck alone. Right, so that's one version now. I can hear you going, oh, I would have said this differently. Oh, I've got another idea. That's perfect. You could, if you want, you could take this, use some of it, and then correct it as you feel, your ideas match more. This is the joy of listening to how different people write, is because you get to agree or disagree. Very important, you do get to disagree. Now, structure. Look how different structure feels compared to language, okay? Structurally, both poems are written in one stanza only, suggesting they each describe one moment in time. Whilst Shelley sets Ozymandias up as a memory, Heaney describes the storm in the present tense, trapping the reader in the now and forcing them to wait with the islanders for the threat to pass. Ozymandias uses a tight rhyme, which echoes Ozymandias' brutal rule and utter tyrannical domination of his people. In contrast, Heaney's lack of rhyme echoes how unpredictable the war in Ireland is for its inhabitants, creating an intense sense of wildness and fear. Now you notice here, I haven't explained the context. I've inferred the context. That's as much as I need. Right, what does the conclusion look like? Very short, remember. Both poems present nature as an unstoppable, powerful force, whilst it is clear that nature is merciless, though it is unclear as to why humans are. Both poems depict humans as being, both poems depict humans using power to destroy, causing untold loss, and whereas nature's storms pass, human war never seems to end. That would be a really clear conclusion. I could mention the poets by name if I wanted, but leaving that out doesn't necessarily rob me of marks. Now, if you were struggling with an introduction, if you wanted to put a one-sentence introduction in, and you didn't know how, you could leave a line, write all of this, and then whatever you've done here, echo it as your first line. Because sometimes that's the very thing people get stuck on is, what do I say in an introduction? How do I sum it up? Most of the time people feel that because they're not sure what they're going to lead into. And that's completely normal. Other people know exactly what they're going to start with. You can't compare the writing journeys. What you've got to do is choose what works for you. Either work. Ideally, in a perfect world, you'd want to know exactly what you were saying before you started writing, but sometimes it's just the phrasing of it that you're not sure of. All right, now I can hear you want to see the other paragraph. I can hear this, so let's go up. So, how do poets present power? Now, here is the tiny, and I do mean absolutely tiny introduction. In Ozymandias and Storm on the Island, both poets present the idea of nature being powerful and humans' life being brittle and fleeting. There you go. So one line only. You get no marks for this. What it does do is for your person marking, it kind of sums up that you know what you want to say. So subtly, that makes you sound more confident, so the person marking wants to naturally ping you at a higher level. So, whereas it doesn't get you physical marks, the impression it makes is that you are competent and you've thought about it and you're quite clear on what you think the difference is. Okay. So, here is now, this is more confident person. They've waffled on quite a lot. And they've also, do you see here, simple sentences? That is structure. So they've combined them. Symbol is structure. Repetition is structure. So you've actually got a combination of structure and language. Do you lose marks? No. Absolutely no, you don't. Okay. What you do want to do is focus on how the poems are different or similar in terms of power. So let's just read it. In Ozymandias, Shelley presents this cruel ruler as someone tyrannical and obsessed with being king of kings. Normally, a good king is a symbol of kindness, compassion, safety, and justness. According to the sculptor, though, Ozymandias' power lay in his cold command and his frown, which is disappointing. If a king wanted to be remembered across time, it is always better to be remembered as a leader who did good by his people, rather than a monster. So, when the reader hears about Ozymandias' statue being shattered and a colossal wreck, these violent adjectives please the reader, because it is clear that the ruler did not deserve mercy. Nature not only buries evidence of his rule beneath endless desert sand, effectively wiping away evidence of his cruelty, But nature also leaves the broken pieces in the statue alone and abandoned, suggesting that his power has been entirely forgotten. In contrast to this, Heaney uses nature's endless storm to portray how human warfare, like nature's storms, are repetitive, endless, and utterly destructive. Unlike Ozymandias, which sums up abuse of power in the past, Storm on the Island depicts abuse of power in the present, showing how humans trapped in their homes try to hunker down and stay safe. The irony here is that in nature, storms pass. However, like in Northern Ireland, fighting is ceaseless, which is why the poem begins so calmly with "We are prepared." This simple sentence is utterly shocking, because it underpins how normal it is to be trapped in the storm of hatred. What is worse, this storm has stripped bare the island to the point where no normal growth like trees, crops, is possible. The repetition of no is stark as well. Humans should be saying no to war. Instead, we find them accepting their fate and... ... I'm sure at this point you've got an additional idea that you probably want to include. But now have a go. Go and look back at the poems and think, if you had to write about how do the poets present power, pick some. What would you choose? These are the ones largely connected with power, but these ones are as well. They contain abuse of power or people being powerless. So you can read the question as powerless as well as being empowered. Again, you can absolutely veer toward nature, although because we've done these, maybe you want to switch to these two columns now. But walk it through verbally. How would you do it?